Hey, hi, welcome. Accidents happen, and there's no two ways about it. And one of the biggest and most important jobs that we will do as safety professionals is investigate incidents. And that's today is a stream that was brought to you basically by request. Mark T suggested I do a video on the elements of an investigation in sequential order. And great idea. However, to do it any justice, it would be long. And in fact, settle back. This live stream is likely going to be an hour. So, Mark, how about doing it in a live stream? Are you good with that? I hope so. And hey, Safety at Site, hello. Today is National Safety Day in India. Hey, awesome, great. If you can, share this link for the safety stream amongst your peers. I'd be honored if I was included in your National Safety Day with your peers. So thank you very much, Safety at Site. Awesome. Glad you could join us. But back to this. It is honestly one of the most important things that we're going to do as a reactive measure, but it can become proactive as well. And the reason it's going to be long is there's 12 important points or steps of an investigation, and I think a 5 to 7 minute video would whip by them too fast. It would essentially be a waste of your time and likely mine. My time is not so valuable, really. I'm here to do the best I can, inform a community and help to promote safety on the internet. But I value yours, so that's why if you'll hang around, and if you can, give me a like. I wouldn't mind. I would appreciate a like. But maybe we can gather together, or pardon me, we can gather ideas around and put this idea of an investigation into some sequential steps. And honestly, I've heard that it's just a 3-step process. Pre-investigation activities, investigation activities, and post-investigation activities. And that's very simple. I've heard about it mentioned as a 7-step process, a 10-step process. In my way of looking at it, I look at there's about 12 steps or 12 important points. So let's get into them and talk about it. But first and foremost, let's talk about the chat rules. And by all means, I appreciate your input. Participate. Introduce yourselves like Safety at Site did. He's obviously from India, and it's National Safety Day in India. And honestly, those are the kind of things that I appreciate. Not only that, if a question comes up in the chat and I don't get to it and you're absolutely assured of the answer, by all means, go ahead, answer it. Your opinions and your knowledge count. But in the same token, be civil, please. No name calling, no insults. Let's be professional. And the note on being professional is this is not professional advice. This is collaboration. This is a group of people getting together and discussing certain health and safety points, and me just facilitating the discussion more than anything else, or leading a lecture and doing Q&A. And yes, we will have some Q&A at the end of this. So that's it. That's the chat stuff. Now, when it gets right down to it, as far as investigations go, the other thing to consider is preparedness. Now, we have an emergency preparedness that we always think about as safety professionals, but what about being prepared for that incident? Okay, so the question is readiness. Are you ready? So have you got your processes in place should an incident of significant impact or complexity occur? And what I mean by that is here's some criteria to think about for you to put it into perspective. Has a worker been transported to medical aid by ambulance? Okay. Have you had to call emergency services because of an injured worker? And are they transporting by ambulance? You know what? That's going to cause some significant interruption. What about an incident that just interrupts your production, your processes or service, where you're losing or halted by 25% or more? Or just for that matter, operations are halted for any reason. Because the moment operations start until they get to that point of the end of the day, throughout that, your job is to make money as an operation. And so if that's halted or disrupted, that means money's being lost. And now, the next thing we have to consider is in readiness, and maybe I jumped the gun here, but also by being ready, do you have policy in place, procedure, the resources necessary for you to conduct that investigation of a magnitude? Keeping in mind that policy empowers the personnel conducting the investigation. Procedure provides that guidance in the parameters permitted by the policy. So basically, the workers conducting the investigation aren't wandering outside of their scope or performing tasks incorrectly or conducting the investigation incorrectly. Now, the resources speaks for itself, but in most cases, you're looking at the personnel and the money. Not just the time spent doing the things, but the personnel and the money. And I'll talk more about money and what I mean by that in a minute or two, so if you give me a second. Now, the next thing, I clicked on the next point too quick, but the investigation kit. I have a playlist regarding incident investigation theory and practice, and in it, I talk about an investigation kit as preparedness. Now, it's great. You can have a lot of handy apps on your cell phone, and you can have your trusty notebook and pen, and those are all great. They are. However, there's other things. There's needing to measure things, needing to take pictures, needing to make sketches, so having a clipboard handy, measuring tape, other items that might be needed, markers, etc. And so it's good to have an incident investigation kit made up and have it prepared. Whether you arrive at the scene and have somebody bring it to you, or you grab it as you get the call and go. Either way, and what I'll do is after the video's over, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description for the incident investigation theory and practice, or if you haven't done so already, you could always just click on that subscribe button, subscribe, and then you'll be able to find everything a lot easier. And you'll never miss a live stream. Now, the next thing to consider is your contact info for the Health and Safety Committee. If you have a health and safety committee, believe you me, if you're the only safety professional, and I've been with organizations where I was the only health and safety professional, and you need them. Many hands make for lighter works. It's just, that's it in a nutshell. And if you have an investigation of any size and complexity, and you don't have the luxury of a safety management team, then you're going to have to rely on your health and safety committee. So having their numbers handy. But not just a matter of their numbers, there's also the numbers of the different service providers. And I'm going to turn the music down completely because it might be aggravating people. But different service providers. And by that, I'm talking about you might have to get professional testing done. Sound levels, lighting levels, if you don't know how to do it or don't have the equipment, you may have to hire out that hygiene analysis. Indoor air quality, hazardous materials testing, or even maybe engineers in doing a structural analysis. There's a myriad of things. In fact, do me a favor. Let me know in the comments down below if you've had to hire any outside professionals and what did it look like and why did you need to do it. I'd be curious to find out because I've had to hire lots, and a lot of them from exactly like you've heard. Whether they be for doing hazardous materials testing or structural integrity, I've had to hire engineers and professional hygienists, etc. So it's good to have those numbers and that contact information available, because you certainly don't want to be digging around for it when you arrive at the accident scene. Now, the next important thing, that's being ready. But beyond that, is when you get the call. Unless you've been trained as a 911 operator or somebody that takes emergency calls or something like that, it's a very tough thing, especially when people call you and something's occurred. So the first trick is to speak slowly and evenly. Okay, your emotions may start rising, but you've got to fight that. When you get the call, it's a good possibility the person on the other end of the line is going to be very panicked or angry, some sort of heightened emotion like anger or something to that effect. Telling that caller to calm down is likely going to be pretty useless. In fact, it's likely going to make things worse. Speak evenly, slowly, don't be accusatory, mind your tone, mind your volume. The 5 W's work excellent here. Who, what, where, why, when. Asking those questions gives the caller something to do and takes their mind off of it. They are often going to answer the question. Yes, they want you to get there right away, but you need to tell them you need some information. And so if they get off track, if they start to freak out, go back to the last question that they answered successfully, ask it again. That will help them to focus and then move on. It's important to ensure care and continuity take place. Ensure that the injured are cared for. Make sure that they're being transferred and transported to medical aid or receiving the first aid that's needed. But then also make sure that the scene is as disturbed as little as possible, but however, encourage people to make it safe. Cordon it off, turn off water, turn off anything that's leaking, shut down power, etc. And make sure it's safe for the personnel that are going to arrive and conduct that investigation. That's pretty essential. Okay? And then leave the caller with some tasks. Even if you say something as simple as, hey, I'm going to be getting there. Do you want to do me a favor and make sure that somebody's outside ready to meet me and walk me in? You likely know the way to get there, but even giving them those simple tasks helps to focus them in a different direction. Okay, and that's what you want to do. Every minute that you take doing an incident investigation is important. It's got to be purposeful, and you've got to be disciplined in doing it. Now, you have to remember, you're heading there. Keep your brain, I'm going to go back to that for just a sec. Keep your brain focused. It's not a crime scene. So watch your tone, watch your volume, watch your body language. Also, when you get there, don't get hooked into anchoring bias. Don't get into this idea of, I know what happened here. No, you may have formed an assumption, an opinion. Great. Don't let those cloud your opinion, because if you get sucked into anchoring bias, you know what? You run the possibility of tanking your investigation and not finding the truth. It's not about how smart you are. It's about finding the truth and preventing similar incidents. Now, when you get to the scene, okay, most important thing that you want to do is take charge. If you don't take charge, you're going to lose it. If you don't take charge, someone else will. And that someone else that takes charge might do all of the wrong things, say all of the wrong things. So unless you need to relinquish control to emergency response personnel like firefighters and police officers, etc., take charge. And even then, when emergency services people come on board, you want to be that second person in charge, okay? Make sure that you stay in charge and have that. And often the police term that I've heard used is command and control. Excuse me, sorry. Now the next thing is you want to tape off or barricade the scene. You want to preserve the continuity. Yes, emergency services personnel or facilities management personnel, repair personnel may need to walk through it to do things to make it safe. No matter what, you want to maintain that incident scene data and integrity. So as soon as you can and as soon as you can get to it, barricade off the scene. The next thing you want to do is there's going to be lots of people there. Split them off into 4 groups. Okay? Herd them. And it's going to be like herding cats, but you're going to have to send one away eventually. But the first people you want to have is those involved. Keep them as close to the incident scene as possible. The immediate witnesses, those that were not involved in the scene but were present, they were the ones that were able to see what occurred or absolutely heard what occurred. And then those arrived shortly on the scene that heard a crash, bang, and they were close by and they arrived before you did or before emergency services did. Now, the looky-loos are the fourth ones. They're the ones that have arrived after you did. Okay, if they have no purpose there, get rid of them. Unless, of course, you're short of hands. But be polite about it, be nice about it, and say, hey, folks, guess what? You know what? You will find out about this when we conclude the investigation, And we will, or I will, provide you updates as soon as I have enough information to do so. I'll make sure that someone communicates updates on the progress of the investigation. But until then, I need you to clear out. Be nice about it. Don't be a jerk. It's not going to get you anywhere. Okay, no questions, just making sure. And now the next thing you want to do is assign tasks depending on the size and complexity of your investigation and the incident scene, and the complexity and size of the tasks that you're going to get to do. And that's why it's important to have that health and safety committee on hand. And that's why it's important to make sure that they have some of the skills and knowledge necessary to provide that assistance during an investigation, to be your hands and eyes and ears, and to help out with it. So if you haven't done so already, it might be a good idea to be coaching some of your health and safety committee or other safety representatives through some of the skills that are necessary to do an investigation. Now, it's important how you, I can remember when I was taking pre-hospital care training and that, and a fellow that I got to meet, he was the doctor in charge of all of the paramedical training for that area. His name was Dr. John Ryan, and he had this saying, and I think it was amazing. He said, what you do in the first 2 minutes with a patient determines what the rest of us are going to do for the next 4 hours. And really and truthfully, you can take and transplant that principle elsewhere. And so the idea in an incident investigation, how you initially manage the scene, will set the tone for the rest of your investigation. It will. Losing control of the incident scene is detrimental. At minimum, it'll prolong your investigation unnecessarily, and at worst, it could tank it where you might not find the truth, or you may be just educated guesses. And so it's important. You don't have to be an officer per se, and leaders emerge. Leaders can take charge without yelling, screaming, and being dictatorial. So be a leader. Okay? That's the best information or advice I can give you at the accident scene. Now, when you're at the scene, you're going to have to conduct interviews, get statements. Now, depending on the complexity and the amount of people, if it's a large scene, consider statement sheets. And I talked about them in a previous live stream about interviews. And they're easy. Like, you can have just the questions already made up and think of, once again, as far as the questions go, the 5 W's: who, what, why, where, when. You can at least get some of the information necessary. The most important people I will talk about in a bit, and I'll work through the idea of the order of importance, or how you can easily prioritize. And once again, like I said, utilize your health and safety committee. They're important when you have a large incident. They're going to be important during the investigation and post in the investigation. I'll talk about that in a bit. But utilize them. Get them to help with the interviews and statements. Now, when you're doing this, think about concentric circles and how you want to prioritize your interview. In other words, the epicenter, the middle, the bullseye of the target, if you will, is the most important. So those are the people that were immediately involved in the incident. And those are the ones that you want to try and get their information as soon as possible. Now, some of it might be tough. You might have to talk to the injured later. You might not get a statement at all until they're back to work, and that's going to be very difficult. Then the next is the immediate witnesses. Those are the ones that saw and heard it happen, that were right there, that were there as the dust was clearing and understood and were able to tell you kind of and fill in that chain of events. Those that arrived immediately afterwards, but not that were there before you got called. And the ones that were called afterwards, they're the outer circle. They're not going to be much help, but you should still get their names anyway, because no matter what, they may have seen something or heard a snippet of conversation that might be helpful. So no matter what, there's no such thing as bad data. There's not. I seem to have a little bit of my green screen interrupting. You'll have to ignore it, okay? I'm sorry. Actually, I have an idea. I might just give me a quick second. I might be able to fix it right away. But as far as it goes, interviews, and if you're to think of an idea on what degrades the quickest, and what it is the people. The people are the ones that degrade the quickest. So you want to make sure that you're interviewing them as soon as possible. Well, I can't seem to fix that, so we'll have to live with it and I'll have to deal with it later. I apologize if the little bit of green on the bottom down here is disturbing people. Oh, well. Anyway, sorry about that, folks. Getting back to it. Now, the next thing we got to remember is the data gathering. And think of it this way in the order of importance, okay? The people are the most important thing to deal with. And then, and thinking of the people, where they are, etc. And then think about the environment next and what you're looking at. Note the lights and everything else like that. And that's why, once again, the idea of thinking of concentric circles and the idea of four corners. So your perimeter of your scene, but working from the center, the epicenter of it out. You want to approach with a systematic approach. Look at the people, the environment, the equipment and machinery, and finally the materials. And look at it that way. So approach it with a systematic approach. Don't go running back and forth, hoping for the best. Use a systematic approach. Start at the center, work your way out. One of the ways that I find to work is the best is consider a clock approach. Figure out and describe the scene as a clock. It's also going to help you very much. And you can draw it as a circle with a clock if you need to. And it will help you to work around it. And if you start at 12 and work your way all the way around back to 12, going bottom to top as well, then it gives you a good systematic approach. I find it works the best for me. Some people want to go back and forth in a grid fashion. Whatever works for you, but approach it systematically, not haphazardly. Don't bounce back and forth. Now, I can't stress it enough. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Using your cell phone to take pictures is great. Just keep in mind, if it's your personal cell phone, you're going to need to do a data dump fairly quick because all sorts of people can get access or request access, and they have the right to do so to those pictures, where it could be law enforcement. It could also be occupational health and safety authorities having jurisdiction, like depending where you are. If you're in British Columbia, WorkSafe BC. If you're in the United States, OSHA. Here in Alberta, Alberta OHS. And they have the right to ask for those things. And so doing a data dump right away, immediately afterward, is a good thing. So do it as soon as possible. Now, besides a picture being worth 1,000 words, don't underestimate the value of a clipboard. I was going to grab one, but I forgot. I hear it lots that a lot of people say, well, I'll just bring my iPad to the incident scene. And hey, great. Bring your iPad. That's awesome. However, clipboards don't smash when you drop them on the ground. Yes, you can get an OtterBox. I realize that. But clipboards don't run out of batteries. You also have lots of paper. You can always borrow extra pens. If your Apple Pencil or S Pen from Samsung run out, or break or whatever, you're kind of screwed. So don't underestimate the value of a clipboard. They're still a good thing. Plus, you can have a checklist taped to the clipboard that you can use that works well. So don't underestimate those things, whatever you do. Now, after the scene, there's something important that a lot of people forget or neglect, or they do it haphazardly and as an after the matter fact, and that's the document review. Document review is essentially important because it'll show you what should have happened, what should have been done, what should have been in place, all of the should haves. Okay, so it's important to do that document review. It's often the most forgotten. And document analysis is essential. Now, it's also important because you could find gaps in the steps that were supposed to have been taken. Those steps might not have been taken. They might not be there. It's also important because you might find that a set of steps that should have been there weren't there. So it's essential in helping you to find gaps. Now, before you go and say, that's it, I'm just going to get every piece of paper available, make a list of what's pertinent. Okay, sit down. The accident has already occurred. Yes, you're likely going to get pressure from people wanting information. I can remember I had a vice president of an organization calling me once, and I had to tell him at 3 separate phone calls, when I have something of merit to tell you, when I have information that's reliable to tell you, I will update you. Okay, so this step may take a while, so you may have to say, right now I'm going through the document review. This is where I've got to this point, and I'll be able to tell you more once I've completed the document review. Leave it at that. Okay, because just like workers that are going without steps and having to exercise their judgment. And judgment is just fueled by previous knowledge, experience, and critical thinking, some things that people might not possess. Same as people that are in the capacities of the C-suites folks, the executive or senior managers, they might not have experienced any of this. They might not have that previous knowledge. So you're going to have to be patient with them, but also approach the same thing and getting that the documents together. If you have to make requests for documents, you don't want to be making repeated phone calls or sending repeated emails to the same people more than once. It's annoying, and for that matter, it's very unprofessional. Get organized. It only takes a few minutes. Get organized, make a list. A lot of cases, you can have a pre-populated list. Things like, for instance, that are always going to be a constant: safe work procedures, job hazard assessments, original equipment manufacturer guides, things like that. You can have those previous inspection reports. Those are always going to usually be a given, but you may need to gather additional information, so make a list of what you need to gather. Now, gaps may be revealed, and as I mentioned, they may become more clear, especially if there are no safe work procedures readily available to address what occurred. The other thing is, it's also good to, at this point, you can recruit others to help out. The Health and Safety Committee may be extremely helpful in this case, getting them to look over and review things. They may make notes. It's always good, though, like anything else, check their work and make sure that they've come to the right conclusions. Now, the next step after document review, create a timeline. We think linear, okay? We do. So timelines provide a perspective, not only for you, but the people reading your report. It helps you while you're doing your analysis. It also helps you while you're writing your report. And as I said before, we think linear. We think like this. We think from beginning to end. And so it's going to help put things in perspective, and putting it in chronological order also will provide clarity as to the sequence of events, and it helps you to establish important points, but also you may discover points that are missing. It may help you to also prepare for something I'm going to talk about in a sec, and that's follow-up interviews or questions. And it helps you prepare that final report. In fact, your final report may have a top-to-bottom timeline that you're going to describe, whether it be from the incident working backwards or backwards to the incident and the events leading up to it. However you write it, it's going to help you to write it in a report, in a format that others will understand. Now, the next thing is follow-up. And after creating a timeline, a lot of times you may understand that there's follow-up questions. It may be follow-up to interviews where you may need to talk to people with additional questions. When I was a kid growing up, and even to a young adult, there was a show on TV, detective show, and it was about a fellow named Columbo. And he was always rumpled. Peter Falk was the actor's name. But he was always rumpled, looked like he slept in all of his clothes, had a cigar that was never lit. And he always told people, stick around. I may have to ask you more questions, or I may have to follow up, or there may be more questions I ask you. Either way, and I talked about it last live stream, you have to be doing the same thing. You have to be assuring the people you talk to that, one, if they think of something else, to reach out to you. And if you think of something else, you may reach out to them. Now, the other thing is with this follow-up, you can get some data confirmation. You may have to go back to the accident scene or the incident scene more than once. And you may have to confirm the data that you've got, whether it be taking your pictures and looking around at different angles, whatever the case may be. So it provides you that opportunity for data confirmation. You can follow up with labs and confirm results. Often if you've never got lab reports before, usually they will provide in it the analysis data. A lot of this, and I've talked about how to compile reports, so I'm not going to beleaguer the point, and it'll be in the playlist that's in the link. And the other thing is the consultant reports, whether you've had to hire structural engineers or hygiene consultants, etc., it enables you to gather and confirm the information that's in the consultant reports. I've had to go back and get consultants or other outside professionals come back and analyze stuff again. So this follow-up becomes an important piece to an incident investigation. Now, the next thing you're looking at is just some deliberation. Okay? In other words, let things soak. A lot of times what happens is, and I've made the mistake early on in my career, I got all my data together and I want to get that report and I want to present it because, yeah, that's what I need to do. And someone I know very well and a person I expect greatly, he has a saying, he says, whatever's a good idea today will still be a good idea tomorrow. So no matter what, if you're done, at least give it a few hours so that you can soak, deliberate, go for a walk, step away from it. Okay? It will help, believe you me. The other thing is it also gives you that opportunity to bounce stuff off your peer network. I've talked about the importance of having a peer network in previous videos, but as a safety professional, it's ultimately important. Because, you know what, no matter what, you are not always right. I know, it really impacted me huge when I discovered that. I've been a safety professional for close to 30 years, and I think it was about 29 years ago I found that out. So you're not always right. It's okay to reach out to your peer network and say, hey, been dealing with something. This is what I found. What do you think? Now, like I said, step back, step away for an hour or two, go for a walk, and believe you me, if everything is still right when you come back, then you can get to the next step. And that next step is putting your conclusions together and determining root causes. Use your timeline, follow it through. And you're going to want, at every significant point, ask questions. Ask 5 whys at every point if you have to. The other thing is, and I know there are going to be flames galore when I say this, but there may be more than one root cause. Because I said before, and I've said it in a lot of different videos, your root cause should never point to things that you can't control. Okay? Because if it does, well, you might as well pack up shop and move the business. Because there's something there that you can't control. And if you can't control a hazard or a risk, then why are you doing business? So it has to be something that you can control. It has to be like your safety management system or program. It has to be the standards that you've established within the different components. It has to be a situation of worker noncompliance, and it may be instances of those three. So look at all of those causal factors in determining the root cause for each. What led to those indirect causes? What led to the direct causes? What led to that incident occur? You may find it's like this spider web that all comes to a common point of the incident. But you've got to start breaking the different strands, or that incident is going to occur again. Hey, and at any time, if you have questions, pop them into the chat. If you're tuning into the live stream afterwards, by all means, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you. And if you disagree with me, by all means, I want to hear a comment. Occasionally, people just leave and check out, and I'd like to know why. And so, yeah, just let me know. Now, when we get right down to it, after we've done the root cause and determined our conclusions, well, then we have to start putting together corrective actions. And once again, depending on the complexity of your situation, you may have lots. So, and some might be simple. It might be edit the safe work procedure, provide training. There you go. It might be something to that effect as what you need to do to determine your corrective actions to eliminate those causal factors in the root cause or root causes. But you may need to create a prioritization schedule. In other words, you may have to use your risk matrix, and I've talked about this before in other videos. You may have to use your risk matrix so that you can justify which corrective actions need to be done, and then use that to create a prioritization schedule. Above all and beyond all, you always want to get short-term fixes first. The longer you delay operations and delay whatever makes your organization money, the worse it's going to be. And the last thing you want is to lose money. So if you can put short-term fixes in place and then work on the long-term and the prioritize corrective actions afterwards, that's going to benefit not only the organization, but you as well. Okay? Because within this corrective action, you're going to have to consider, and you may have to reach out to people within the organization, your health and safety committee, external providers, etc. What are the long-term and resource allocations required? What's the money look like? Money talks. And you cannot manage what you cannot measure, so you have to have some reasonable expectations in there, because these are questions you're going to get asked when you're before the Health and Safety Committee and giving presentations to the executive, etc. I'll talk about them in a second. Now, beyond that, you want to establish reasonable guidelines. Okay? What happens lots is people will say, well, we'll just give them 3 months, or we'll give them 30 days, or whatever. Reasonable guidelines, but no matter what, you always have to consider this, okay? Short term should not be measurable in months, okay? So short-term fixes shouldn't be measurable in months, but your long-term or your prioritized fixes may be over 30, 60, 90 days. So that's fine, but this should all be included in your report, because that's recording your due diligence. That's documenting your due diligence and having why. Always remember, put it to the reasonable person test after. And with your corrective actions, does it fix the problem? Does it create new hazards? Do you need other measures? And is it going to be that permanent fix? And are we going to have to deal with something else later? Do we need additional permissions? Do we need additional allocations? So put it through a checklist, a check matrix. The most important three, of course, are, does it fix the problem? Did it create new hazards? And is there other measures like training needed? Now, you're going to have to then present your findings. Remember, I said way at the beginning is that you'll be providing updates, and you should provide them in an order of priority. And I know the executive are always going to want to be first, but the most important group is the Health and Safety Committee. That is the best practice approach. They're the ones that are going to be behind you. They're the ones that are going to be helping out with the rollout of the corrective actions. They're the ones that are going to be making other additional recommendations to the employer. So they should be the first people that hear it. And I know you may disagree with me, but if you do me a favor. Let me know in the comments. Tell me why. Now, the next bunch, of course, is going to be executive and senior management. They're going to want to know exactly what occurred. You're going to have to give a presentation to them. And I've talked about writing your report and creating your report and doing a presentation. Keep in mind, don't underestimate the value of a good executive summary. In fact, you should write your whole report, then your executive summary. Don't write your executive summary first. Your executive summary is just going to have a few points. I don't want to go into that. I did a whole video on incident reporting and how to create your report. So I suggest you have a look at it. It'll be in the playlist. That'll be in the description later. Or like anything else, like I said, if you want, you can subscribe and ding that bell. And then you also get notified of new content. Leave me a comment and I'll try to do the best I can to answer questions. But above all and beyond all, when you're doing your presentation, don't always start off with your executive summary, and then you may need to draw attention to additional points. And I talked about how to give that presentation as well in another video. Above all and beyond all, you're going to have to sanitize and redact as required, okay? As needed, as the legislation in your jurisdiction requires. And it all depends. So make sure that you're familiar with it. There's a myriad of different variables, so I can't go into them all. For instance, we have different privacy requirements in different provinces in Canada. Yeah, I know, you'd think we would have it figured out, but we don't. So make sure that you sanitize and redact as required. For executive and senior management, they're usually going to be privy to everything. The Health and Safety Committee may not be privy to things like if there's injury reports, obviously the injuries found, and that might not be permitted because in most cases, that's still considered paramedical information. It still should have some sort of privacy behind it. So make sure you sanitize as required. The other thing is draw up a communication plan and follow it. Okay? If you draw one up and it works, save it. You're going to have to use it again. Trust me. And if you want to know more about what a good communication plan would look like, let me know. Let me know in the comments. And I think I can do a video. And if I start playing the video and it's going to be too long, it'll turn into a live stream. That's basically how it works. So let me know in the comments if you want to know about a communication plan after an incident. Now, no matter what, you're going to have some ongoing monitoring. A lot of times people go, all done now, done my presentation, all done. No, not at all. Corrective actions, the progress behind it or lack of progress, and why. Because if corrective actions are taking an extended amount of time, they're, say, going over 30 days, or you have multiple health and safety committee meetings while those corrective actions are going on, somebody should be checking and reporting back on the progress of those corrective actions, whether they're being done internally, and especially important if you're hiring a third-party contractor or service provider to do them. There also has to be a plan in place how the transition from short-term fixes to permanent solutions is, what it looks like, and it should be monitored. The other thing that you want to monitor, an important piece, and it's often not talked about, is the worker feedback from what you've done. So if you have new safe work procedures or new processes in place or institute new safe work practices, get the worker feedback. You want to find out. By all appearances, things might be working, but you need that worker feedback for confirmation. Okay? So that becomes important. Now, did everything work? Did your incident management program work? Did every step that you have in place, did it do its job? Because if not, you may need to go back and start retooling and revising. Okay, so examine it. Are there revisions needed, and would those revisions help to alleviate the problem next time around? And don't be afraid to loop the Health and Safety Committee meeting in as needed. Okay? Um, an extra set of eyes, or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how big your Health and Safety Committee is, can give you a lot of help. Okay? And revise, edit, and it doesn't hurt to tabletop it to a certain extent or do a dry run through just to see if it would solve the problem. Okay? So, there we are. Those are the steps in an incident investigation. Mark, if you tuned in, I hope they work. And I hope it makes a difference to folks. So, yeah. Any questions on the steps in an incident investigation? Any questions at all? I've got one I got to address, and I forgot to make a slide up for it. So I'm just going to grab it from the channel. Okay, Morale Inside, who gives me a lot of questions and a lot of feedback, and I think it's awesome. He gave me 2. One I have to research, and I posted that in the previous comments as well. But he says he wants to know how insurance companies fulfill a major role in enforcing safety by complying or by carrying out inspections and audits. And once again, that all depends on your jurisdiction. Here in Canada, our insurance model is that workers' compensation bodies are separate in most cases, with the exception of WorkSafe BC, from the actual OHS authorities having jurisdiction. And so they're separate entities. So doesn't mean that one won't ask the other to look in on something and why there's certain incidents going on. But then usually the OHS authorities will come and do site visits, not necessarily a site-wide inspection. Sometimes they do, but it's usually prompted by a report. Usually it does prompt people to clean up their act and change things around and start behaving differently. But in most cases in Canada, the insurers don't do inspections or audits. However, in your jurisdiction, if they are doing them, do me a favor, weigh in the comments. Let me know. I'd be interested in hearing how it works. I haven't had the need to research it and look into it, so I'd be interested in hearing it. And I imagine when they come on scene and do inspections or provide audits, it's just usually the same result as the authorities having jurisdiction here. It usually prompts a bit of a fix in most cases. Yeah. Now, as far as it goes, I haven't had any other questions other than one I have to research, and I'll repeat that one as well. Morale also asked, can you explain ILO health and safety conversations and recommendations? Once again, it's an international body. I haven't had to deal with it much. I've heard about it, but I haven't had to. So I promised him I'd research and get back to the answer. I don't know. It'd be very erudite. It'd be something I'll have to gather information from. So yeah, once again, good on you for stumping me. Well done. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the questions that have come in this week. Does anybody in the chat have any questions? I'll pour myself a bit more tea while you're thinking of them. And then if not, we'll do a closing and sign off. Yeah. And once again, Safety at Site, if you're still online, is there anything that's done special for the National Safety Day in India? And if you want to answer in the comments later, by all means, go right ahead. And what I'll do is I'll even enter that into the chat as soon as I find my mouse. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So once again, everybody, thanks for hanging out. If there's no more questions, I'll let you have the rest of your Saturday. Not that I could keep you, but yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday and the rest of your weekends. And I look forward to chatting in another couple of weeks. I've got some ideas on material for a live stream, but we'll see what happens. Morale asked one about auditing methods, so maybe that might be. And David Greeno also asked about it as well. So that might be something that we'll do next live stream. So anyway, if that's the case, take care. Do me a favor. Once again, always be a safety leader, be an influencer, and wherever you are, whether you be at work, play, and especially at work, provoke safety. Don't just think about it. Don't just talk about it, but walk the walk. Okay? Provoke safety wherever you are. Okay? Take care. Bye for now.